Is my PPT visible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, sir.
Right
I'll
now,
just, sir.
so in entire screen, na slideshow mode.
Sir. Yeah. Hello, sir. Is it visible?
Yes, yes, yes. Now
Okay,
you
sir.
can start with
Okay.
introduction.
Yeah. My name is Govind Raj. I am doing my MSc in biochemistry from Kerala. So today we are going to discuss about respiratory system. In the previous classes about animal organization, cellular organization, and all, we had dealt with the evolution of different modes of respiratory system in different organisms that was explained in by using some example in the previous classes. So now today we will be discussing more about the human respiratory system and the anatomy of respiratory system, the pulmonary ventilation. The topics that we are going to deal with are this anatomy of respiratory system, pulmonary ventilation, alveolar exchange of gases, transport of gases, and regulation of respiration. So let's move on. Why respiration is needed? Respiration provides oxygen to the tissues and removes carbon dioxide. As we know, what respiration does is it provides us with the pure oxygen from the environment, and this oxygen is utilized by our cells to produce energy and all. And the byproduct or the waste product that produced as a part of this mechanism is the carbon dioxide, which is removed by the uh, lungs also. So here the four major function or four major steps in respiration are the pulmonary ventilation, that is how the oxygen from the atmosphere is taken into our system, and it is transported to the cells where it is utilized for energy production. And the second is the diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide into the blood, that is how it gets transported. And the third one is the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood, and how this oxygen and carbon dioxide is how oxygen is transported to the cells, whereas the carbon dioxide is removed from cells and transported to lungs. And the fourth one will be the regulation of ventilation and how this respiratory mechanism is controlled by our human system, by our brain. So, as we can see in this picture, we have this is the respiratory system or respiratory canal, we can say. So, here we can see the nasal canal. So, we breathe through our nose, and the oxygen, the air is taken inside, and it passes through a pharynx, larynx, and between that there is a portion known as epiglottis, which is a finger-like extension that functions as a hatch. So what it does is that it prevents the food or food particles that we are ingested through our mouth from entering the lungs or the respiratory pathway. And sometimes this portion, when food gets stuck in this portion, it causes lethal consequences where the person can die due to apoxia. Apoxia is the condition where the lungs is deprived of oxygen, and that results in ultimately to death. So after that we have trachea, and then the trachea branches out into bronchus. Bronchus are again further divide into bronchioles, and at last this bronchus results in the formation, or bronchus ends up in the alveoli. alveoli is the end of the respiratory tree. The respiratory tree, in the sense that how the branches different, how the trachea branches to bronchuses, and how these bronchi are further divided into bronchioles and at last to the alveoli. So our lungs is protected by the rib cage. So the lungs is inside this rib cage, and the lungs has a outer layer, that is a protective layer, that is known as pleura. So here we can see pleura. So pleura is a very what it does is that it creates a pouch or a bag in which the lungs is situated. So in a sense, the lungs is just floating inside this pleural bag, uh, from the point of attachment. So at the point of attachment, that is known as hilum. So from there the lungs is just floating in this rib cage, but pressure is created by the pleura that causes the attachment of lungs to the back portion of the lungs, and thereby fixate it to the rib cage. So it is just like gluing something onto a surface. So pleura, it gives overall protection to the lungs, and also it furtherly it provides a thin layer, like it creates a space between the lungs and pleura, where a fluid is situated, that is known as pleural fluid. So this fluid helps in lubrication of lungs, and also its smooth functioning. So when lungs contract and relaxes, the friction generated is dissipated by this fluid. And we can see at, so the end, the portion where the gas is exchanged is known as the alveoli. So here there is, we can see the blood capillaries, which which is the main reason for the exchange of gases. This is the site where the oxygen and carbon dioxide is exchanged, and this result in the respiratory system. So, anatomy of pulmonary ventilation. So, ventilation caused by contraction of breathing muscles, which includes muscles that help in expanding the thoracic cavity, are called the inspiratory muscles, because they help in inhalation. Inhalation is the process by which air is taken inside our lungs, whereas expiration is the process by, or exhalation is the process by which we breathe out the air, that is the carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide containing impure air is exhaled. So for exhalation, expiratory muscles helps in the exhalation process. Sorry. So the respiratory muscles, how they increase and decrease the volume of lungs. So here the anterior posterior expansion of thoracic cavity results in the change in the volume of lungs. So when the lungs um, when the here two types of motion is seen here. One is anterior posterior expansion of thoracic cavity, and also upward and downward contraction of diaphragm. So when we talked about the different organs of respiratory system, we forgot to mention the diaphragm. So here diaphragm is like a partition that par- a partition that separate the respiratory or thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity. So this diaphragm contracts, and there is a motion of upward motion and downward motion of diaphragm, which results in the change in the lung volume. So that we'll see in further slides. So this respiration is facilitated by, so uh, so the respiration is also facilitated by the formation of a pressure gradient. So in order for the air inside our lungs to move out, there should be a pressure difference. So when the pressure outside of our lungs is greater than the pressure inside of our lungs, the air is drawn into the lungs, whereas when the pressure inside the lungs is higher than atmospheric pressure, the exhalation of the air takes place. That is the outward movement of air. So higher pressure in lungs relative to the atmosphere cause expiration of air, whereas the higher atmospheric pressure compared to the lung cavity draws air inward, causing inspiration. So these are the major muscles and accessory muscles that help in the respiratory procedure. So respiration in the sense that inspiration and expiration. So the muscles of inspiration, these include, the principal ones include the external intercostals, which elevate the ribs. So here what happens is that these these muscle groups are present in the uh, present associated with the ribs. So when they contract, that results in that results in the elevation of upward movement of ribs. And the next group of muscles are the parasternal intercalaginous muscles. So that is seen in combination with the sternum and the ribs. So these also elevate, or they contract and elevate the rib cage, so that the volume the volume of the lungs is increased. Next comes the diaphragm. So diaphragm, it is a dome like structure, and it increases the longitudinal dimension of chest and elevating lower ribs. So diaphragm causes the upward thrust of this, or upward compression. So this compression, what causes is that there is an upward movement of diaphragm, and also the chest expands outwards and causes the increase of volume. And next we have the muscles that helps in expiration. So here we have expiration results from the recoil of lungs. So what happens here is that when these muscles relaxes, that results in the opposite motion, and the diaphragm lowers and the chest compresses, and thus the volume of the lungs is reduced. So reduced volume of the lungs gets reduced, and thereby expiration takes place. So this picture shows the same theory. So here the higher pressure is seen um, outside the atmosphere. So there is low pressure comparing to the atmosphere. So what happens is that gets air is inspired into the air gets inspired into the lungs, and thus the volume of the air increases, the volume of the lungs increases. Whereas in case of expiration, there is a higher pressure of air inside the lungs, and there is a comparatively low atmospheric pressure. So the air moves from the lungs to the outer side. That is the expiration. So here also the same procedure is explained here. So the external intercostals, what it does is that it elevates the rib cage, and thus the volume gets increased. And this muscle contraction helps in the inspiration. And there is also a thoracic elastic recoil, that is when the relaxation of these muscles happens, that results in the expiration. So here the external intercostal muscles get relaxed, and this outweighs the so here what happens is that the oxygen the higher pressure due to the when the tissue exchange the air from the blood vessels to the alveoli. So there is a comparatively high pressure created there. So that results in expiration of air from the lungs to the outside. So the inflow and outflow of air is driven by relative pressure difference in lungs with respect to the atmosphere. So sorry. So the single small airway provides more resistance than a single large airway. So what here what it says is that when so we have talked about the branching of pharynx into different bronchus, bronchioles, and alveoli, etc. So what happens here is that when you look at a tree, you can see the branches. So as the branches progresses, the branch become thinner and thinner. So there is a gradual reduction in the uh, volume of these branches, and this what in a total big picture, what happens is that the surface area and surface the overall volume increases. So when when we split a bubble into small bubbles, so the in the end result is that the total volume gets increased. So that is the same principle here. So what happens is that when the blood vessel when the air passage that is the bronchus, bronchioles, and etc. get further reduced in size, progressing to the alveoli. So what happens is that as the volume increases in the canal, the flow in this airflow in this becomes very small, and this small airflow causes a laminar flow other than the turbulent flow. When a large volume of air is traveling through a pipe, there is a very turbulent airflow. But when the airflow is small, then the flow will be more laminar. Laminar is very systematic or layer wise flow of air. So for this reason, the large and particularly the medium sized airways actually provide greater resistance to the flow than do the more numerous small airways. So when comparing the smaller airways, the larger and medium sized airways has more turbulent airflow, so that the airflow is very less in that portion. I mean air is in a brown. We know that air in gases there is Brownian motion. That is, the molecules of air has a random movement. So in larger spaces, this random movement or the turbulent airflow causes the reduction in the speed of or a reduction in airflow. But as the airflow passage decreases, the flow of air will be laminar. That causes a very ordered airflow. So that's what we meant here. So next, the exchange of gases. When coming to the exchange of gases, there is several factors, there is several pressures that is concerned with this portion. So one or two among one is the pleural pressure, and the next one is transpulmonary pressure, and the other one is alveolar pressure. So in the pleural pressure, what it means is that the pressure created by the pleura. So here when I explained about the pleura, I told that the pleura, so the continuous when in the pleural cavity there is pleural fluid. So this pleural fluid is always in a movement, and this fluid is extracted out into the lymphatics continuously. So this creates, sorry, so this creates a suction, a kind of suction so by which there is a pressure developed. This sucking pressure is known as pleural pressure. So the pressure surrounding the lungs within the pleural space is known as pleural pressure. So during quiet breathing, that is normal breathing, the pleural pressure is negative. That is, there is a small suction force that is seen there. That's why it is known as the that is why it is taken negative. So it is below atmospheric pressure, and during sorry about that. So during active expiration, the pleural pressure can become positive. So this positive pleural pressure may temporarily collapse the bronchi and cause limitation of airflow. So what happens is that when we uh, expire with forcefully expire, what happens is that the lungs contract. So there is a opposite pressure is developed, and that pressure causes a high that results in a higher or positive pleural pressure. So the next, so here in this graph you can see that at the initial, sorry, so at the initial, so we have the pressure relative to atmosphere. So whenever we say about the pleural pressure or transpulmonary pressure or alveolar pressure, we are saying it with respect to the atmospheric pressure. So with respect to atmospheric pressure, the pleural pressure is negative because of the small kind of suction it provides to the lungs. So at first, during the inspiration, at the beginning of the inspiration, there is a negative pleural pressure, that is, it is negative 2 mmHg, and then as it progresses, as we begin to inspire, it reaches a negative 6, that is, it uh, drops, the pleural pressure drops again, and when we begin our expiration, the pleural the just the opposite of the what happened in the expiration inspiration takes place, that is, the pleural pressure is again rising up towards the negative 2. So that is pleural pressure. Now what is transpulmonary pressure? So before going to that, we will look at what is alveolar pressure. So alveolar pressure is nothing but the pressure created by the air within the alveoli. So alveolar pressure is the pressure of air inside the lung alveoli. It is measured in terms of centimeter H2O within the alveoli, and the alveolar pressure is given with respect to the atmospheric pressure, as we said earlier, which is always set to 0. So comparing, so what we um, does is that we take the alveolar pressure as 0, and when we inspire, the air inflow into the alveoli causes a high okay. So what happens is that there is a depression in intraalveolar pressure. That is because the air is withdrawn out into the tissues, and when so residually there is a we take the pressure as 0. So during inspiration, the air is taken into the blood vessels, so the alveoli pressure decreases, and when we expire, from the tissues, the air comes into the alveoli, and that causes positive pressure, and thus and again it comes to an equilibrium or the 0 pressure. So when alveoli pressure exceeds atmospheric pressure, it is positive airflow. The positive air flows out, and when alveolar pressure is below atmospheric pressure, it is negative. So the air flows from higher pressure at the mouth down the lungs to the lower pressure in the alveoli. So, in order for the inspiration to take place, there should be a comparably lower pressure in the alveoli, and for expiration to take place, there should be a comparatively higher pressure in the alveoli. This simple thing should be noted so that you can know which pressure is higher, which pressure is lower. At the end, inspiration or expiration, when flow temporarily stops, the alveolar pressure is zero. That is why here and here and here we take the alveoli pressure is zero. That is, at that time there is no flow of air, and at that time that atmospheric pressure is taken same as that of alveolar pressure. So what happens is that when alveolar pressure and the atmospheric pressure is same, then we can say that there is no exchange of air taking place there. So now we will move on to different lung volumes and capacities. So we will see, first we will see which are the different lung volumes. So lung volumes means different volumes of air according to what criteria we are looking at. So first we have the tidal volume. So tidal volume is the volume of air moved into or out of the lungs during quiet breathing. Quiet breathing means normal breathing. So tidal volume means whenever we are breathing, how much volume of air we take in or take out is taken as the tidal volume. And now the residual volume. So the residual volume is the volume of air remaining in the lungs after a maximal exhalation. So after a forceful exhalation, how much amount of air or how much volume of air is there remaining, that is known as the residual volume. And the expiratory reserve volume. So expiratory reserve volume is the maximal volume of air that can be exhaled for the end expiratory position. That is how much air we can breathe out forcefully. That is expiratory reserve volume. So the so what is the difference between expiratory reserve volume and residual volume? Can anybody tell me that? Just read each one and tell me what is the difference between ERV and RV, or residual volume and expiratory reserve volume. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir, it is a question to all the participants.
Okay.
So anyone?
RV is remaining amount of the air after the exhalation, whereas the expiratory reserve volume is the maximum amount of the air that can be present as RV.
यस सो यहाँ क्या हम बोलता है कि जब हम एक सांस बाहर होता है तो
Good, 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 good.
तो
Good try.
कितना हवा हमारी लंग्स पे होता है उसको हम आरवी बोलता है। वो रह जाता है, जिस एयर वो लंग्स पे रह जाता है उसको हम आरवी बोलता है। लेकिन हाँ, द एक्सपिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम इज जितना एयर हम एक्सपिरेट कर सकता है उसको एक्सपिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम कहता है। So I think some have understood that. So now let's see
Very
what
good,
is
very good.
inspiratory reserve volume. Thank you, sir. So inspiratory reserve volume is the maximal volume that can be inhaled from the end inspiratory level. So what what we say here is that how much of air we can inhale after after a resting position. That is what we are looking here. So जितना हवा हम एक फोर्सफुल इंस्पिरेशन से हमारे लंग्स में that we can take in is known as the inspiratory reserve volume. Okay, now these are the different types of volumes of air that we can measure. So these are all measurable, and there are specific methods and techniques which are used to measure each volumes that we will explain if we get the chance. Okay, and now we can say what is total lung capacity. So total lung capacity is the volume of lungs at maximal inflation. That is when it is the sum of VC and RV. So here VC means the vital capacity, and the RV means residual volume. So a residual volume is the amount of air that is left inside our lungs after a forceful expiration, and that plus the vital capacity. So vital capacity is the volume of air breathed out after the deepest inhalation. So how the volume of air breathed out after deepest inhalation. So how much air that we can exhale out, the maximum of that air plus how much volume of air is remaining in our lungs after that expiration. That is what the VC or vital capacity means. So that amount of air gives the total lung capacity. That is the total amount of volume of air that we can store in our lungs. That is denoted by the total lung capacity. So now, what is inspiratory capacity? So inspiratory capacity is the sum of IRV and TV. So TV, as we know, is the tidal volume. That is how much air we breathe in each normal breathing, plus the inspiratory capacity. So inspiratory capacity is the IRV plus TV. So in inspiratory reserve volume. So what is inspiratory reserve volume? Inspiratory reserve volume is the maximal volume that can be inhaled. So um, how much volume of air we can inhale, that plus the normal the normal volume of air that we breathe in. So that gives the inspiratory capacity. Now inspiratory vital capacity means the maximum volume of air inhaled from the point of maximum expiration. So after expiring to the maximum, how much of air, how much of so it is like a measure of how much uh, volume of air we can inspire after a forceful expiration. So that's what inspiratory vital capacity means. Now, sorry. So now, what is vital capacity? Vital capacity, as we told earlier, the volume of air breathed out after the deepest inhalation. And now, what is functional residual capacity? So functional residual capacity is the volume in the lungs at end expiratory position. So after an expiration, how much volume of air um, that is remaining in our lungs, that is functional residual capacity. So now one more question. So what is so here also there is so here also we are measuring how much air is there left in the lungs, and also we are in case of residual volume also we are measuring the same. So why what is the difference between the residual volume and FRC, that is functional residual capacity? Can anyone tell me? Hello. I think some of you have left, or I can't see who was listening to this. So please come
Actually,
forward and
Mohit,
Yeah. Yeah, Mohit, please.
Yes, yes. So can you
So,
repeat?
Mohit,
Yeah.
Govind tried to
yeah.
make his lecture more interactive.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I can
sir.
see that his efforts.
Yes.
So, so what is the difference between functional residual capacity? You can read the functional residual capacity, and you can read the residual volume. So, in each case, there is how much we are measuring the amount of air that is left in the lungs. So, what is the difference between these two? That is the question.
Okay. Uh, So expiratory position is the normal expiration.
Yes.
So functional residual capacity is more than the RV. It includes the I think it's FRC is equal to RV plus the expiration volume.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
RV
You
plus
are right.
ERV maybe.
Yes. So what is the difference is that the functional residual capacity, here we are considering the normal breathing, but in
Yes.
residual volume we are considering the
Forceful.
forceful expiration.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that is
Okay.
the difference between RV and FRC. So after forceful expiration, how much air is left in the lungs, that is the residual volume. So that is like how much air is remaining in the lungs forever. Okay. But in functional residual volume, there is it is in a dynamic state, that is there is continuous exchange of air, so there is more air present, there is more air that is left in the lungs during the normal breathing. Okay. So there is a continuous, like there is a due to many reason, the air, when we breathe in, the full amount of the air that we breathe in doesn't actually get to the tissues. Some amount of some amount of air is left within the the passageways. So these blocks, or these what we can say, this mm, these air that is not cannot be used is known as, or these spaces where the air gets locked is known as dead spaces. Okay. So looking at this chart, so this is like a graph that is these volumes, we had told you, I had told you about how we can measure this inspiration and expiration and all. So here what we use to measure the volume is a instrument known as pyrometer. So this particular graph is the output of that spirometer. So how our breathing is measured in a spirometer, that is shown here. So okay, so after this presentation, I will show you two videos of instrument that is used for the respiratory checking and all. So here, the y-axis gives you the volume of air, and x-axis is the time. So what happens during the time, that is denoted in the x-axis, and y-axis we have, sorry, y-axis we have the volume of air that is taken in and out. So um, just looking at the picture, can anyone tell me what is the wave like motion, that what is this normal wave like motion other than this high peaks and high peak? Can anyone tell me? Just look at this picture and give me your what idea you got from this picture. This is like I'll give you some hints. This is very repeated one, and there is no variation in the amount of volume, and it is repeated in a regular interval. So can anyone tell me what this this area here represents this and this, except this high peak and uh, downward peak.
I didn't understood which area are you talking about.
This
I
area,
think
this,
it is tidal volume.
yeah, tidal volume. Okay, tidal volume is
Normal inspiration and
volume.
then normal expiration.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
that's what I meant. So
Yes.
here, what happens is that you can see that it is regularly spaced. That is, it is periodical, and it is the volume is not changing. That means when we are in a resting position or when we are breathing normally, so then this kind of a graph is this kind the spirometer, the volume of air will be measured like this. So that is the tidal volume. Tidal volume is the amount of air breathed in or breathed out during normal respiration. So now from this when after a normal breathing, when we inhale with when we forcefully inhale, what happens is that the amount of air increases. So that is shown by this peak. So here it is the inspiratory reserve volume plus tidal volume. So for your understanding, you can refer what is IRV. So IRV, what we have is that inspiratory, the maximal volume that can be inhaled from end inspiratory level. So after a normal inspiration, how much air we take in, that is known as inspiratory reserve volume, and that plus tidal volume. Okay, so that thus we have inspiratory reserve volume is the amount of volume of air that we can inspire forcefully, and that plus tidal volume we get inspiratory capacity. So how much volume of air that we can forcefully inspire, that is inspiratory capacity. Now, can anyone tell me what is expiratory reserve volume? Or
The
just
extra volume, extra amount of air which we can expire forcefully after the normal
yes,
breathing, normal respiration.
yes, yes, that's it. So this peak, this downward peak represent how much volume of air we can expire. That means that much air is reduced from the lungs. That is why it is so small. That is why um, it is showing a downward peak. That is that much air is exhaled out. Okay, so at the normal state we had a 37 ml per kg of air. Then after forceful expiration we only have 50 ml per kg. So that gives the expiratory reserve volume. And
So,
how
sorry,
much?
sorry to interrupt. I have one doubt.
Yeah,
What is this per kg? Like, what does per kg means here in case
per
of
kg
volume?
means the in case of volume, I think
It
that
it might be.
yes, yes, hello.
Is it like a weight of a person?
No, no, no.
Weight of
Why
any
will
No, no,
person?
why will
no.
volume of air depend on person's weight?
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
I think it would be something related to blood. I'm not sure about it. So how much blood? Because there is exchange of gas, no. So I'll get back to you in this the next class or after the discussion when we uh, after discussion I'll message you in the net group
Okay,
net
okay.
WhatsApp group.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Thank
Now, after the now we had told about expiratory reserve volume. After that, residual volume, that is after forceful
How
expiration.
many slides left?
Sir, I have about uh, 21 only. Now
21
it's
slides left.
no 10 slides left. Total 21.
Okay, miss, how much time you need?
Sir, now it's 8 o'clock. Okay. Sir, maximum 20 minutes.
Okay, okay, completed.
Okay, sir. Sorry. So here we told, so expiratory reserve volume plus residual volume, we get functional residual capacity. And now the vital capacity means expiratory reserve volume plus tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve
Yes.
volume.
Dharam, mute your mic. Your mic is on, Dharam. Yes, please.
Okay, so that gives our vital capacity. So how much volume of air we can breathe in and out, that is what is vital capacity. So how much vital capacity means, the in total sense, how much volume of air we can uh, contain in the lungs by inspiration and expiration. So there is some amount of air is always there in the lungs, that is the residual volume. So apart from that, how much of air we can forcefully inspire and store in the lungs, that is known as vital capacity. So this vital capacity plus residual volume, that is the volume of air that is there in lungs forever, that gives the total lung capacity. So how much volume of air that the lungs can include, that is the total lung capacity. Okay, so now we can look at how the gas exchange is taking place inside the alveoli. So alveoli is the interface where the carbon dioxide and oxygen is exchanged from blood to the atmospheric air, that is we breathe in atmospheric air and we take in the oxygen and give out the carbon dioxide that is from our uh, after the byproduct that is formed as carbon dioxide. So here so here the there is the partial pressure. So we know, we have studied in the lower classes that partial pressure is the pressure exerted by a particular gas in a mixture of gases. So we have, if we have two gases A and B, uh, if we add the partial pressure of each gas, we get the total pressure exerted by that gas. So that is the same principle here. So we in the air, we have oxygen and carbon dioxide. So the partial pressure plays a role in exchange of this diffusion of these gases between the alveoli and the blood vessels. So this is the partial pressure table that is at different sites given in the CBSE textbook. So just go through it. So whenever there is an exchange taking place, that will take place from the higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. So looking at here, alveolar air, we have higher PO2, that is the partial pressure of high oxygen is higher. So the oxygen will diffuse into the blood, and this oxygenated blood gets to the tissues where the partial pressure of the oxygen will be lower inside the cells. So the oxygen is transferred into the cells. So after the whole cellular respiration, the carbon dioxide get accumulated in the cells, that increases the amount of the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, that is at the tissues. When carbon dioxide is formed, that is 45 is the uh, partial pressure, 45 mmHg is produced, and this get transferred to the blood where it is uh, where it is the 45 itself, and after reaching alveoli, it diffuses out into the alveolar air. So that's how the gas is exchanged. And now let's looking at the gaseous exchange, how alveoli plays that role. The alveoli are the final branching of the respiratory tree. So here the primary gas exchange takes place. So these are the functional units where the essential mechanism of respiration takes place. So here the gas blood barrier between alveolar space and the pulmonary capillaries is extremely thin. So this is what we are looking at. So we have the respiratory organ cells, that is the alveolar cells, and we have the blood vessels. And here the interface is so small that the gases get readily diffused into the blood and from the blood to the outside. So that is all dependent on the partial pressure. To reach the blood, oxygen must diffuse through the alveolar epithelium, a thin interstitial space, and the capillary endothelium. The CO2 follows the reverse course to reach the alveoli. That is what how the oxygen is diffused into the blood. The exact opposite steps is there for the carbon dioxide. That is, if the partial pressure of oxygen is higher in the alveolar air, then the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is lower there. So comparing to the blood, so there is a higher partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the blood and a lower partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the alveolar air. So the carbon dioxide gets diffused into the alveolar air, whereas the oxygen from alveolar air into the uh, blood vessels. So this is what happens there. The oxygen having higher partial pressure diffuses into the blood, and the carbon dioxide from the deoxygenated blood uh, has a higher partial pressure, and that gets into the alveolar air, and that is expired. So simple diffusion facilitated by differential partial pressure of CO2 and O2 across the alveolar epithelium, which readily allows the exchange of gases due to the delicate membranous wall of alveoli and blood vessels. So how the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place inside the blood, that is what we are going to look at next. So in oxygen transport in blood, what happens is that the RBCs are the carrier of oxygen. So in RBCs there is hemoglobin. So we all are aware of how hemoglobin is transferring this oxygen. So here the oxygen is bound to the heme group, and there is it is the one heme can accommodate about 4 oxygen, and thus the oxygen is transported in the hemoglobin. So RBCs, so there is different essentially hemoglobin is a tetramer, and it is made up of 4 protein subunits. So these subunits are these so there is a globin and there is a heme part, and this this combined effect of these two is resulting in the oxygen transport. So in so there is a mechanism that is known as the cooperative binding, where actually in a resting state or a resting state, the heme or the oxygen is bound. Let me say it more clearly. So when the oxygen is when one oxygen molecule get incorporated into the hemoglobin, there is a change in the conformation of the entire molecule that results in a change in affinity of hemoglobin towards oxygen. So that facilitate additional 3 oxygen molecules is bounded onto the hemoglobin, and thus the fully oxygenated hemoglobin transports the oxygen to the tissues. And after that, due to the partial pressure variation, the oxygen get unbound and the oxygen is transferred to the tissues. Okay, so this cooperative binding is the phenomena by which the affinity of hemoglobin towards oxygen is changed upon binding of one oxygen molecule to the hemoglobin. Now let's see how the carbon dioxide is transported in blood. So from the tissue cells. After cell metabolism, the byproduct carbon dioxide is produced that gets diffused into the blood, where um, dioxide binds with the carbon dioxide binds with or reacts with water to form carbonic anhydrase, and it gets converted into the carbonic anhydrase causes the formation of carbonic acid, which dissociate or ionize to bicarbonate ion plus H plus ions, and this bicarbonate ion is the main carrier of carbon dioxide in in carbaminohemoglobin. So the formation of carbaminohemoglobin also facilitate the carbon dioxide transport, and um, there is variation. So different so the concentration of different bicarbonate ions and different hydrogen ions here causes variation in binding of carbon dioxide to the as bicarbonate, and this differences is studied in the as a Haldane effect and all. So the carbon dioxide that is produced in the cell diffuses out of the cell and into the bloodstream through the simple diffusion. The CO2 then then combines with water to form carbonic acid, and this reaction catalyzed by the carbonic anhydrase. However, H2CO3 formed is very unstable and thus forms the bicarbonate and hydrogen ions. So this bicarbonate leaves the cell through simple diffusion and enters the bloodstream, and this causes the chloride ions. So to compensate for the charge difference, so when the bicarbonate gets out of the blood, the get out into the blood, the there is a in order to compensate for the loss of charge, the uh, chloride ions diffuses into the erythrocytes. This phase is known as chloride shift. Okay. So now talking about the regulation of respiration, the respiratory system is regulated by nervous regulation and also chemical regulation. So here in nervous regulation of respiration includes respiratory centers present in medulla oblongata. So it detects the level of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood and sends required signals by respiratory muscles. And this respiratory, so what it means that according to the differences of presence of oxygen in the blood, if the oxygen in the blood is less, then it is detected in the medulla oblongata or the respiratory centers, and these they give a signal to the respiratory muscles to initiate inspiration or expiration, so that the change in the or the uh, or the unavailability of the oxygen is compensated. So here the medullary centers include the inspiratory center and the expiratory center, and the inspiratory center is where the inspiration is controlled, and this there is a combined action of different signaling pathways, and how this signaling pathways ends in the contraction of inspiratory muscles, and how this inspiratory muscle causes that we all looked at right now. And in the expiratory center is concerned with forceful breathing. So so when there is a requirement of after tremendous exercises and all, when we are in very high, we are using higher amount of energy, then we need more oxygenated blood in the tissues, so we expire forcefully, or we inspire forcefully. For that we use so uh, when we uh, when we exercise more, we develop more carbon dioxide, so there is energy requirement is high, so there is more cellular respiration, more cellular metabolism. so more energy is produced, as well as more carbon dioxide is produced. So um, in order to remove this carbon dioxide, we expire forcefully. So this is controlled by the expiratory center in the medulla. And now the pontine centers. So there are the next group of respiration control centers, that is the pond that is situated in the pons area of the brain. So here the pontine center have pneumotaxic uh, centers, that is the air sensitive centers, and apneustic centers. So that measures uh, the so the apneustic center, what it does is it acts on the inspiratory centers and increases the depth of inspiration. So the pneumotaxic centers, so it controls the activity of respiratory centers. So whenever there is hypoxia, so and in that so let me be more clear about it. So the apneustic center, what it means is that it detects the hypoxic conditions, that when the tissues is lacking oxygen, or we are having low breath, or that situation is sensed by the apneustic center, and it gives particular signal to the inspiratory centers to initiate the uh, inspiratory mechanism. So in order to initiate the inspiratory mechanism, the inspiratory centers should receive message from the apneustic center, and this message from the apneustic center is sensed by the inspiratory center, and the inspiratory center gives a message to the inspiratory muscles, and thus the regulation, or thus the inspiration mechanism is initiated, and thus the respiration is controlled. So respiration is in total is the combination of inspiration and expiration. Without each, there is no survival. Okay, so here we can see the neural pathway. So there is an afferent pathway and efferent pathway. So here we can see the aortic body. So these are the regions where the blood oxygen levels are measured, and that it relays specific information, so about the oxygen levels in the blood to the through neurons, it through nerve fibers, it transmits this signal to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord make it this spinal cord give this special information to the medulla and all the respiratory and inspiratory centers, and thus the several chemoreceptors and baroreceptors. Here in the sense of chemoreceptors, that senses the blood oxygen levels, and in the baroreceptors, as we know, they measures the pressure variations, and so the different pressure in the alveolar pressure and different pleural pressure, etc., are measured by these baroreceptors, and consequent messages are given whenever there is a changes in the breathing rate, or breathing or blood oxygen level, and thus this whole respiratory mechanism control is controlled by different inspiratory centers, expiratory centers, and the medullary system, the medullary respiratory respiration center and all. And that is how the respiration mechanism is controlled. So that was my portion.
Good, good,
So,
good. So now this is your third lecture, I think, Hannah.
yes, sir. Yes.